Mark, here he is. So nice to see you again. Right. So, Mark, great to have you as part of the Influencer Strategist community. Really excited because you are a real expert in this space and have been for many years. Even appeared in my book, of course, which I'm hugely grateful for.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk a little about strategic frameworks and particularly some campaigns that you've done a little while ago, but I think real resonate still very much today. So tell us a little bit about yourself first and foremost before we sort of deep dive into the campaign.
No worries. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Mark Dandy. I've been working in the influencer marketing, social media space now for about 9 years. In that time, I've been head of influencer marketing at a couple of agencies. I've also opened up 3 influencer marketing agencies of my own and been on the founding partnership of that. And in my time, I've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. You're looking at Spotify, Nike, PlayStation, Coca-Cola, and some of those. I've also been a judge at the Influencer Marketing Awards, so I've been around the block a little bit when it comes to the influencer space.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the things that really impressed me about you is that you've created this strategic framework. So, before you set up when you get a brief with a client, it's so important to have a system, isn't it, and a process. Now, some people have got different ones, but I'm really keen to hear about what your approach is.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say created, I'd say implemented is one of those things really, because I guess in the strategy space, there's been a lot of work done, by various strategists that have been really amazing, and you start to see kind of how people are bringing things together, and then you just try and apply some of those frameworks to different marketing sectors and see how that works out. One of the things that I've really noticed from working on hundreds of campaigns really is that you tend to notice really that it's broken down into 3 key asks, I would say. And normally when you get an influencer campaign, you'll normally have a brand that wants to either have like an awareness and engagement campaign, which is just about, reach and just engaging with people, engaging with audiences and just trying to, hit an impressions target or a reach target and speak to as many people as possible. You'll have like call to action campaign. That might be where a brand wants you to take an action, be it visit a website, take a survey, join a competition, something along those lines. Or you'll get a conversion campaign, which a brand is just looking for sales and to drive audiences down a funnel. You'll find that a lot of brands want you to do all 3 things at once when working with influencers. Like, oh, can't they just reach 1 million people and sell a load of products at the same time? But it's clear in terms of like, actually setting up a campaign for success and really kind of honing in on what that key objective is and really building that.
Mm.
So in order to do that, I'm a real fan of what's known as a get to buy framework, which is essentially you want to get and then an audience profile, to take an action, and then buy, doing something that will lead to that outcome. So as an example, you would say, if you're a fashion brand, for example, you might say, we're looking to get Gen Z fashion enthusiasts to see Zara as the most optimized fashion brand for Gen Z women by taking talent and influencers to showcase behind the scenes how the design process works for the next collection. That might be an example where you could like build that framework out where you really kind of putting Zara at the heart of fashion content and the heart of fashion culture by showing the behind the scenes design process as to how a new collection is brought to life by using talent and influencers to do that. It's a really nice simple framework really to put people in the mindset of what are we trying to achieve, and then how are we going to do that and start to lead out. So yeah, I'm always a fan of that one.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point that you mentioned because I think if you're a consultant or you're an advisor, the brand doesn't always know what the right fit is. And you've just identified sometimes they want all of those 3 things because they've got some KPIs to meet. But actually, if you work with them and try and support them and help them get the right result by listening to your process, you're more likely to get more buy-in, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, when you look at it in terms of like how influencers can play a part in so many different things. So you'll hear a lot, I think, in marketing space now about cultural relevancy is one of those things really like, how can brands be at the heart of culture and how can they be relevant in culture? And sometimes dependent on the different verticals, it can be difficult to define what culture is. But when you start actually honing into influencers that are really kind of key in that social media space, what are they talking about? How are they integrating, these different conversations across audiences? How are they integrating brands into that content? And it's interesting if you look at the likes of, say, Adidas or someone like that, Adidas sports brand. They've then kind of merged now into fashion. So you've got like Adidas Originals and going back to that space now where they're really high in the fashion space. But then they might be leaning into music culture by working with Stormzy or someone like that then is really kind of putting them there in the heart of kind of like, urban music and urban streetwear culture. And then that's kind of how brands then start to transcend that cultural element. So, that might be how you work with influencers to place Adidas at the heart of fashion, or it might be about taking influencers to an event that Stormzy's hosting by Adidas and then putting them at the heart of that event and, all of these different things and what's the outcome that then leads to that. It's a really fun and interesting process getting to the bottom of that in terms of like, how you do those integrations.
Well, obviously, it's all about strategy, isn't it? It's about understanding and coming up with different themes that could be quite different. And, you and I were talking just before we're having this chat now about even buying TV spots, which and having the influencers as key part of that campaign. And then that additional, other media. And in fact, I think what it just sums up to me is the importance of not just having influencers as a standalone media, but realizing that actually the results can be so much greater amplified if it's finding the right relevant media that reflects the campaign.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's an interesting kind of turn of events, I would say, is that like if you were to go back maybe even as close as 3 years ago, but maybe more 4 or 5, you would probably hear a lot of people saying about specialisms in terms of like, going down the influencer specialist route and working with specialist agencies that work in influencers specifically. And obviously that is great in terms of being able to understand their experience and the context that they know where influencers live and how they, operate on campaigns. But now it's actually gone full circle where it's now the agencies and the brands that are the most integrated in terms of bringing all of these different, like the marketing mix together, be it TV, out of home, digital, social, paid social, influencer, how, influencer can still be at the heart of that and start to drive all of these interactions. So for example, I could talk to you for an hour about how you can uplift your email interactions by using influencer content in email, for example, and how you bring that all to life. But if you'd be interested, I can talk you through like a bit of a mini like case study, so to speak, or whatever, in terms of how we took that TV ad and what that looks like. So I was working with a fashion brand a few years ago, and they happened to be the headline sponsor of Love Island as a fashion partner. And that was, a huge TV moment in that we knew that, it's especially in the UK for those international audiences, like Love Island is massive in the UK in the summer, and it takes over TV pretty much every month.
Just to stop you a second, it's massive internationally as well.
Yeah, as well. But I think in the UK, it's really part of culture. But yeah, so we were working with a fashion brand, and they signed a sponsorship deal, and it was then about like, how can we really use all of the different elements of that marketing mix where Love Island's showing up on TV, it's on radio, it's all of these different things, and how can we bring that to life in a way that felt different? And, as a brand, they were, very heavily invested in influencer. They were like, quite a pioneer in that space and was really relevant in working with influencers throughout the years. And we were like, do you know what? Like, wouldn't it be an absolutely fantastic opportunity to, rather than hiring actresses and actors and models and bringing them into the TV ad, why don't we work with influencers? It's a reward for working with the brand. Like, you've been a loyal kind of ambassador for us for a few years, and we really want to reward that. And we're going to put you in this TV ad and, push you out nationally. But at the same time, you're also looking at it as an opportunity of, well, if influencers are on TV, they're going to post about it. They're going to start talking about it more online. They're going to, be on Twitter and speaking about it, or X now, so to speak, but on Twitter, or they'll be on Instagram and TikTok, and they'll be posting about it. Every time that ad turns up on TV, They're going to be reacting to it live. They're going to be engaging with their audiences. Maybe we can run competitions for every time audiences see the ad on TV, they can tag the influencer that was in it and they can pick a winner or something like that, and just building on those interactions. And then we took, those influencers and we put them on out of home billboards. And again, every time they pass one in the street, posting it on Instagram stories, and that just brought the brand really into the digital element as well, and really helped utilize that. And I think, when we were looking at the difference, you were seeing influencer content on the website where we were showing an outfit, for example, on Instagram. But then when you clicked on the Instagram link to take you through to the website, rather than seeing a model shot content, you were seeing content directly from the influencer or from the show. And we were seeing, a 40% uplift in add to basket value. We were seeing a 27% uplift in sales value. Like, it was, an astronomically successful campaign, because rather than just focusing on influencers in their medium online, how do we bring it into all of the different marketing mix? And incredibly successful.
Well, actually, it's quite interesting that you mention out of home and TV, because so often when we talk about boosting influencer content, it does tend to be just online, paid media, not necessarily those other channels. And I remember seeing Molly-Mae on who's a big influencer and big brand in her own right, suddenly appear on the London Underground on things, and so you can see how that can really add so much more value to that original content.
Say, for example, as well, like, this is how, like, some of that can happen, especially with digital out of home now. And in terms of that is, you can go online. Say, for example, you're a typical Instagram user, and we'll use Molly-Mae as an example. Molly-Mae posts on Instagram promoting a brand. You just like that content. You've not necessarily gone in and commented and massively engaged, but you've just tapped like. What now happens is that will then leave a track that you've liked that post, and then maybe in the next post that Molly-Mae does, we look to put paid media spend behind it, and we want to target everyone that's liked that content in the last 30 days.
Absolutely.
Well, then you'll see an ad that features Molly-Mae, but by the brand, that then is directly targeted as you as an engaged audience member. At this time, though, it might be that you've clicked through and then you've gone, oh, do you know what? I'll have a little look on the website. This outfit looks nice. Maybe I like it. And you don't buy anything, but you get a little pop-up that comes on screen that says 10% off your first order or your next order if you put your email address in. So you put your email address in. We then know what page you landed on. So we'll send you an email that features Molly-Mae, that then says, oh, welcome offer or whatever. We hear that you like these outfits, 10% off if you then decide to purchase. But you don't. You then get another ad as someone that's visited the site that might feature another influencer, or it might feature Molly again, that says, special offer of maybe 20% off site because we didn't convert you with the first 10% on email. And then you do go through, and then maybe you do happen to buy something. You've bought something, and then you've given your address. Now we know that through mass data, that there's actually trend at the moment with people within Greater Manchester or Greater London buying a particular style of jacket that was featured by Molly-Mae or whatever, and is now a trend in that particular area. So the next time you walk outside, we've now got digital billboards with Molly-Mae wearing that jacket in that area, because we know that there's a trend of people in that specific location buying those out. That all started from one like on Instagram. And it takes you down that funnel, and that's how all of these different mediums are now working to influence purchase. It's known as like omni-channel marketing now, and really having all of these different touch points. But you can place influencer content at the heart, every single one of them, to see potential uplifting conversion.
Yeah, amazing. Wonderful. Thank you for that, Mark. That was really inspiring to hear. On the back of that, what do you think are some of the trends that we're going to see in the next year? If we're sat down here in a year's time, what would you say are some of the big...
I think the way the algorithms work now are quite different. So what you used to have was who you followed was who you saw. So like, if I go and follow an influencer, I would likely then see their content because I've indicated that I like them. Now, if I follow an influencer that posts about travel, for example, rather than just seeing that influencer, I'm going to see more content about travel because I've sent a signal saying I like travel rather than liking that particular influencer. So that's now shaped how the algorithms work in terms of showing you more interest-led content rather than people-led content, which is a really interesting shift. Because of that as well, you've now got a lot of people using social media to search. So rather than going on Google, you can see a lot more people searching on TikTok. I think the stat was that 15% of all product discovery is now done on TikTok, in terms of brands now being discovered on TikTok and products, which is a phenomenal stat, and that's increasing every single year. And that's through people actively searching for different products and brands. And you're going to see that more and more likely. And because of that, in the same way that maybe 10 years ago, you'd have people trying to navigate the SEO landscape by getting follow links on websites to try and rank higher on Google, you're going to see brands now reaching out to influencers and mass scale creators to try and influence how they show up in the search algorithms on social. So the more likely they are to be trying to index for keywords around certain search trends. And I think that's going to be a really interesting kind of setup for the future in terms of how brands are targeting social media. I think because of that, you'll find rather than brands working with an influencer on a big scale campaign and working with, 5 or 10 influencers, they're going to be trying to work with 50 to 100 to really try and get that volume, which then is going to help or whatever impact search discovery. So I do see the market shifting quite a bit. And we've started to see that now within influencer pricing. So micro influencers are becoming more popular because of the volume option. So their prices are going up. You've got your big macro influencers that have still got that sway in terms of their image and their recognition. You're talking Molly Mays and stuff like that. They know obviously that they're well known. So their prices are still staying quite high. But those in the middle are now kind of quite stuck really, where they're not maybe quite big enough to have that instant image impact, but they're also too expensive to be worked at for scale. And so we're starting to see their prices really shift, and that's having a bit of a change in the market and the landscape at the moment. I'd say, as we've just spoken about, you'll probably see less specialism in influencer, more integration in terms of how influencer is being integrated into TV, out of home, digital, all of these different things. And that'll be quite an interesting shift to see over the next couple of years, how brands take that on. Bit of a slow burner at the moment, but I think it's getting there. Yeah, obviously everybody likes to talk about AI. I think that that will start to play a bit of an impact, mainly in the UGC space, though. I think in terms of how quickly brands can look at test casing content, you might see a lot of kind of AI-led content that's got a lot of small scale paid media behind. And what brands will be doing is looking at messaging to see what kind of might get pickup, and then putting that into a more kind of higher scale influencer campaign then to drive that messaging further. So it'll be really interesting to see how that pans out as well.
Great. Thank you. That's been amazing. Really, really good.